Hey Clashes, I saw this screenshot right here in my Discord server, and going perfect in the new legend system with the new modifiers is always super impressive. So I asked Darkwind, the person who posted that screenshot, what strategy are you actually running? Well, the answer was surprising to me, because he is actually using this specific thrower strategy. He came up with this himself, and he's using throwers with as well some druids, with as well some furnaces inside the clan castle. Well, I had to ask if he would share some attacks, and he was kind enough to share a couple of attacks versus different type of bases. So let's dive in so we can learn all together how we can use throwers in the new legend modifier system and completely smash bases. And a really big thank you goes to Darkwind in general for sharing all of those attacks and sharing like the entire strategy with everyone. But let's start things off with the first style of base, and that is the double rage tower setup. This setup, or like in general, rage towers are super popular, or were super popular in the beginning of Legend. A lot of people were surprised by the crazy damage output those defenses can deal when they are 20% stronger in general, and then like the higher damage already is scaling really well with the damage increase, with the percentage damage increase from the rage towers. And, well, if you're now climbing higher up in Legends, there are not as many Rage Tower bases left anymore, because it feels like you can counter them somewhat easily, at least the better players. Because you have Fireball in the army, you have the Overgrowth spell in your army, you have the Royal Gem charge within the army. There are many tools in the game how you can counter those Rage Towers somewhat easily. On this one, on this strategy, obviously it is the Fireball to counter them. And this is as well why I predicted in the beginning to have Poison Towers being like the meta. And you can really feel, as soon as you're climbing into like the top 1000 or something, you will see mostly only Poison Towers at this point, because they're just way more reliable. But back to the strategy, back to the attack. Because the first key thing, which you can maybe already see with this attack, is delay your king. Those defenses 20% stronger will melt through your king like it's nothing. He is just going to go down super quick, but you want to have the deep earthquake boots from him in the base, otherwise you cannot get all the way through. This is why you can tell he delayed the king so long that the throwers already passed the first wall, and this is the point where the king kind of like got ahead of them. So it was super late. The next thing is, those druids are meant for the clones of the Archer Queen. So pretty much on the outside, supporting the outside push. Because those defenses on the outside now deal so much damage that you need some type of support, so adding druids over there is a really smart choice. Now the throwers in the core, having opened up everything because of the earthquake boots, and they can now swarm the entire rest of the base and completely demolish it. As well, the Archer Queen staying alive on the outside, being able to like the non-stop supportive tool which she is when she can stay alive, is super crucial. On top of that, he has the Frosty on her, with now spawning those 3 Frost Mites, which are complete game changers, slowing down those insanely strong defenses, which gives you then more time to overpower the rest of them. As well, the 3 furnaces inside the clan castle on the back end can give some really great support, because the big difference here is, compared to dragon attacks, you're playing a ground army, which means those defenses typically are distracted on the back end, but then the furnaces are overtaking, and the fire mites can just deal so much nice damage. With that being said, the rage tower bases should be no problem for you with this army. But there's still one more rage tower style out there, which is not the double rage, but it's the Invis-rage tower core. And the approach for those type of bases might surprise you, because he's not doing an early fireball versus those bases. And yes, if you're doing like a Warden charge with Rocket Loons, you can take some more time, you have more support tools to deliver that fireball to the core of the base, which is pretty much instantly giving you a 3-star play with the fireball versus those type of bases. The problem here now with the Warden charge, and as well then some throwers behind, time is going to be your biggest enemy if you're trying to get the fireball onto the town hall, onto the core in general. Yes, on this base, you could argue that maybe you get a quick fireball somehow, but in general, those type of bases, those type of cores are way deeper, so getting the fireball right is a big challenge. So what he does instead, he is doing the fireball during the attack, which is obviously like another set, like another skill you have to learn and master, but if you can get it right, I was shocked how good this actually looks like. So we're going to check out the entire attack, because first off, he's just setting up the pathing, he's just setting up the funnel for like, again, 30 to 60 seconds, and then he's starting with his throwers lure the Warden over, and again, take a look at when he's actually using the King to open up the core. Again, something as well which I notice a lot with my Warden charge and then like the Rocket Dudes and the Hero Dive later on. My King sometimes cannot even get past the first wall. This is why it's so important to delay him. He has to get further into the base, keeping him alive. That is such a crucial thing. Well, on this part, he has to get hooked in. On this one, it's kind of unfortunate. He's jumping as he's getting hooked, so he's just getting stunned. Fireball now is into the core. There goes the hook tower. Now the entire base is open. And at this stage, with the fireball just connecting, the base is done. So there are a lot of things you have to pay attention to at the same time. But really, if you can do that, this strategy is looking crazy. I was already like earlier telling you like in my top 3 strategy video that I feel like the throwers are a really underrated army strategy or like army in general, which could perform really well in this legend mode. And Darkwind is really proving that. He is smashing it with this strategy. But there's a lot of things you can point out and as well learn about this. Which means, for example, saving some loons, using even a rocket loon to make sure your healers are staying safe. With this army and with the furnace inside the siege barracks, you're not having any support loons during the attack. So keeping your healers alive is not a tricky, not an easy thing to do. It's a really tricky and challenging thing to do. So you have to be careful with that. How is he doing it? Well, he's using a few test loons in the beginning. Then he's reinforcing that with the rocket loon. The reason here is that the rocket loon, because it's so fast, can actually take multiple black mines, which means because of the speed, he's like going for the next defense. And if there are black mines popping in, you can even trigger multiple black mines at the same time. And then 1 or 2 test loons delay that for even further into the core. So you have to pay attention to a lot of different things for sure, because this is now what Legend is all about. I feel like, yes, there are some strategies, some mechanics which are insanely strong, like the Fireball, like the Royal Champion Charge, or the Overgrowth spell. All of those are like 3-star win conditions, I guess. But at the end of the day, I feel like Legend right now is not a strategy difference. It's all about having a player difference. And Darkwind really showcasing that with his attacks. Really clean execution there and making sure that all of those healers staying safe. And with that being said, we now are getting slowly towards the future, which means double poison. This is something which in pro play has been now used for plenty of time because it's just so consistent. There are no clear weaknesses to the poison tower because, well, it will just launch the poison, and the difference here is that it deals 20% more damage. This means it slows down the attacker, it takes down test loons, for example, which means black mines can be then easier triggered. It does so much, and again, as well, the damage now with the plus 20% is not to be underestimated whatsoever either. So while the Rage Tower has clear weaknesses, and it feels like right now the Rage Tower is kind of like a... Maybe it sounds harsher than I mean it, but like it's a noob stomper where people are not as experienced within the high damage which the Rage Tower can do. This is then where the Rage Tower can really shine. While the Poison Tower is like a really consistent and stable defense which will always get the value, and it doesn't really matter on how good the attacker is. It's way harder to, well, be countered. On this one now, he is going for the Fireball, just again for the pathing. That is the most crucial thing in general when you're playing with those ground follow-up armies. This can be, by the way, Throwers, this can be, by the way, Super Witches, this can be, by the way, Root Riders, for example. After the Fireball, you have many different choices of ground armies where you can smash a base. Super Yetis, by the way, as well. Throwers are just the most consistent, I feel like, out of those options, even than Root Riders, if you can play it right, because Spring Traps are a thing now. And they can really mess up with your Root Riders, with your Super Yetis, for example, why it's way harder for them to actually hit those Throwers, for example. But let's get back to the exact attack, because right now something happens which you did not expect. The Warden on a suicide mission, unfortunately, because he's diving in and the Warden is going down. I have seen a lot of people saying, oh my god, iTzu, now you have to play everything perfect in Legends. And nope, this is not really correct. You can always recover as long as the mistakes are obviously not too big. But because of the opening, the plan itself already being really solid, it is not the biggest issue for him to actually have the Warden going down. Obviously, it does not help, don't get me wrong, but the damage at this point was already dealt. The pathing was set, and this means now the Throwers on the back end can do a great job with the Druids, the Mirrors, the clones for the Archer Queen were kept alive over the entire duration. And this means the Royal Champion now can come in on the back end, still has some ability left. And this base, again, is getting smashed. Yes, no swag spells, but still, I would say a really, really comfy 3-star, because take a look at that. He's now using the Ice Block spell, which is another thing that can be so nicely utilized for the Fireball itself. But as well, if you're good with the Fireball, you don't always need it. So you can then use it on your action figure, on your Giant, or on your King, for example. So there are plenty of use cases. I mean, this base is completely smashed. Royal Champ alive. He has, I think, the Queen alive. He has like a few Throwers alive. He has the Giant alive. So plenty of power still left. That is for sure. And a really clean attack. But he has shared one more. What happens now if everything goes to plan? Because let's take a look at this, and I want to explain again why Poison Towers will be kind of like the future. Because with the Rage Tower bases, and talking about like the Royal Champion Charge especially, which is just the meta right now, still, you can combine it with Dragons, you can combine it with Root Riders, which is the most common one. Well, the thing is just that if you're having a more spread out base, because with the Poison Tower you can spread out defenses, because it means you're not forced to put everything into 1 or 2 compartments with the Rage Towers. Like otherwise the Rage Towers are somewhat useless if there is no value around it. But this means that with Poison Towers you can spread things more out, and in between the different defenses, the Royal Champion has to go and walk a way longer distance. This means for Royal Champion charges with the Dragons and such, this is where those attacks can then actually struggle and have some issues, because they're getting less value. Because if everything is in one place, the Royal Champion has to do one more step and it's already close to the next building. On this one, he's not going for the craziest value for the Fireball, and it's more about the pathing for the Throwers. On this one, having a Fireball for this compartment gives him, yes, a couple of key defenses, but like not the same value as you would think if you compare it with the Rage Tower compartment or with the Rage Invis Tower core, for example. Instead on this one, it's just all about the pathing, all about the plan, which means he has taken out the top compartment now, going into this one next, and the pathing is pretty set, which means you're going to use the jump, then he's going to use the Earthquake Boots, and then he's going to get to the Town Hall. The Queen on the outside, really crucial, and now you see the Rocket Loon, by the way, flying in, triggering all of those red mines, but the other Loon is like still slowly following, so as I said, get the Rocket Loon in, try to trigger as many traps. But now back to the Archer Queen, which I wanted to talk about in just a second, is as soon as you pop the Archer Queen ability, use the Druids. Not earlier. This is your timing to use the Druids. Do not waste their healing form. It is not good. You can see popping the Queen ability as he's getting to like the heavy damage on the bottom. Right away the Druids behind to make sure that he's keeping the DPS of the clones of the Archer Queen alive. Now moving forward, getting the damage in the core, and with the Rage spell, with the Rage aura of the Warden, those healers are keeping those Throwers alive versus out of the damage. Again, the range of the Town Hall, or like the compartment of the Town Hall, is built that the Archer Queen cannot reach it, which means the Throwers, they can. So that is then really simple. Royal Champ on the backhand with the Rocket Spear, and this means technically that he has 2 Invis to swag, a Freeze, an Ice Block, and this is what happens when actually when the Warden is not going down. So really, really big props to Darkwind. Great army which he came up with, great army which he designed overall. I really like the Druid on the outside. I feel like that is something which we might see more often as well in the future. To keep the Archer Queen just safe, keep the Archer Queen and especially her clones alive to deal as much damage as possible. And, well, just really big shout out to him. Thank you so much for sharing the attacks. I hope everyone out there learned a little bit. I will share the army link down below in the description of the video. And otherwise, I wish you guys back tomorrow with the next Clash video. Until then, see ya, and bye-bye.